Looks like we're live on YouTube. This is Male Entrepreneur Podcast, episode number 183. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur Podcast, the podcast for men who win, with your host, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
Good, man. I'm loving your new camera setup. It's looking sharp.
Yeah, I still have a little bit to kind of get fine-tuned in. I'm learning as I go, but yeah, you've had a nice camera for a while. I had to step up my game and try and compete with you.
Oh man, it actually looks really, really good. Which camera did you end up getting, by the way?
Sony just released this it's supposed to be a vlogging camera. It's called the Sony ZV-E10. I believe, man, it's a complicated name. It's part of their A series, I believe. But as far as like a little home studio goes, it's working out perfect for me. So I'm super stoked about it.
Sweet. Just out of curiosity, it's a total tangent, but does it plug right in? Is it a USB?
Yeah, so it plugs right in. It actually goes through, it can go through the USB. I have it going through an HDMI capture card, but it captures 1080 or 4K, and it gives me that like nice, what I think they call it bokeh effect, where you get the blurry background and you got the shallow depth of field. So it's pretty nice. I like it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. So for those of you techies out there, check out that camera.
Yeah.
So you were saying, Nathan?
I was just going to say, one of the good things about owning your own business is you can buy a bunch of electronic toys and just write them off as business expenses.
Yeah, I love that part. It's actually fun. Actually, you know what? In my industry, I get to write pretty much everything off. You know, I get a book, write it off, get that, because everything's about coaching, and it's probably similar to you, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So cool. Yeah, let's jump right into it.
Okay, so what do we got? What do we got lined up for the listeners today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about, this difference between things being personal versus just focusing on your behavior. And what I mean by that is it's not you, it's your behavior. And this has come about really from obviously working with many men in terms of two particular emotions that guys bring about, or three, you could say, that really hurt them and hold them back from making any progress. And those are shame, guilt, and that feeling of not being enough. And those three things can really cripple a person and cripple your progress. And anytime we make things personal, like it's me, that holds us back. And it's important for us to take that and say, okay, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's just my behavior. Maybe it's just my approach. And if you take a look at your life like that, if you take a look at your relationships like that, if you take a look at your business like that, you're actually going to be a lot further ahead, because then you start modifying your behavior. Whereas a lot of guys get stuck in who they are, which is just as important, but it holds them back because they're not feeling good about themselves.
So there's so many different ways to go with this conversation. I'm going to take it back to when I was just kind of getting into business ownership and looking into self-development and stuff like that. When I was in that stage of my life, I very much was still stuck in like victim mindset, the poor picked on me, why does this stuff have to happen to me mode. And then when I kind of got into some of this stuff, I think that, I guess, to start off the conversation, there's an important differentiation between you and your behavior, because it's really easy to see the two as one. And even still 20 years later, I still sometimes have trouble differentiating the two. So when I first started getting into all this stuff, it was a bunch of behavioral tweaks, but it did start to feel like I became a new person. So I want to know your take on when you say the difference between you and your behavior, what is the difference? And then what's if there is any, the correlation, the where are the two joined and where are the two separated in your mind?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. You know, working out, I used to work out like crazy, right? And I still work out, but probably not to the same intensity that I used to. But sometimes when I first started working out, I would go into the gym and I'd be working out harder than a lot of other guys. and I wouldn't be growing as fast as they would be. So I always said, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my genetics, right? There's something inside of me that's holding me back. And I couldn't figure it out because I'm like, why am I working out that much harder and not seeing the results? Where I needed to really take a look was, it's not me, it's my approach. Maybe there's something in my workout technique that isn't as effective as I thought it would be. Maybe my diet isn't as effective as I thought it would be. Maybe it's not matching with who I am, matching with my genetics. And it took me actually a very long time to figure that out. It took me probably, if I think about it, almost 15 years to really figure out, 15 to some 17, 18 years to figure out my workout routine that best fit my genetics. And it was completely different than what I thought it would be. And as soon as I made that shift in terms of how I approach things, my system and my behavior from that perspective, I started to see some drastic change. And so I no longer beat myself up and held myself back. It was just changing my approach.
So, what is your opinion on? Because I hear this a lot. That's just who I am. I'm a Leo, so that's just the way that I am. Or I'm a Taurus, or I come from a poor background, or I had this happen to me when I was a child, and so that's just the way that I am. Um, a lot of times I think people use that as kind of an excuse to not look at their behavior, to not look at how they can change their behavior and how they can actually change who they are. But that's just who I am excuse. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that is a very common one. And I think that's in a number of things. I think some people just believe that. I think they truly believe that that's just who they are. And I think some people use it as an excuse. And I think those two overlap quite a bit, right? It's easy to say this is just who I am, therefore I don't have to put in the effort to change who I am. And that is an easy cop out. I see that quite a bit. I see that a ton, actually, I should say, with a lot of people. It's really interesting because now we're kind of going into the world of coaches and stuff like that. But I find it very interesting. This is really what pisses me off when people use personality profiles to pigeonhole people. And I see this a lot in the corporate world because a lot of corporate trainers and executive coaches use personality profiles. And what ends up happening, they say, you are this type of personality. Now you can understand yourself better. You can understand the other person better. Well, that's great. It's great to have a personality profile to understand yourself, but that doesn't pigeonhole you to who you are. This is something that I learned very early on in my corporate career because I was pissed. I was sitting in that corner. I'm like, shit, this isn't that great. You know what? I should be better than this, right? And then what I learned was, how do I flex my skills, my behavior, my approaches, so I can actually be in any one of those quadrants that I wanted to be and not just be pigeonholed in one. And that is when you become extremely powerful. There's people that ask me, okay, if you were to pick, and we have these exercises when we go into corporate environments, and someone may ask you, what's your favorite animal? If you could describe yourself as an animal, who would it be? And I always choose chameleon. And they wonder why. I say, because I can choose to be who I want to be in whatever situation I want to be in or situation I'm put in. That is the most powerful. I could come out there and say, I'm a lion, I'm tough, I'm, roar, I'm going to eat you up. Yeah, great. That's great. But being a lion in every situation is not going to be effective. You have to be able to shift to be effective in life. And that's really what this is coming down to, is you have to be able to shift your behavior in different situations. When you tie your behavior to your identity and say, this is who I am, that's when you get stuck.
So to kind of tie on to that, a lot of people beat themselves up about things. They say, oh, I'm just lazy, or, oh, I'm just fat, or, oh, I'm just not a leader. I don't have leadership qualities. In your realm of work with guys, do you come across that very often where people just believe negative things about themselves, kind of beat themselves up about it? And if so, what are some ways to overcome that?
Yeah, of course. Why? Because the world is telling us the very same thing as well, right? If you're walking around and you feel like you're not let's just say you feel like you're overweight. Well, guess what? There's 1,000 men's health and women's health magazines plus social media that's telling you, yeah, you're overweight, because half those women are in bikinis, half those guys got their shirts off and stuff like that. Now, if it's motivating you, great. But if it's making you feel bad about yourself, here's what you need to do. You got to take that stuff and not expose yourself to it. That is the easiest thing to do. Oh, actually, I should say it's the easiest remedy, one of the toughest things to do, because it's not easy, because you're constantly bombarded by all of this stimulus, right? You're bombarded by social media. You're bombarded by other people telling you who they believe you are. And it's a tough one, but I very, very much have come to the point in my life where I minimize my interactions with people, with media, with things that don't empower me. And that is the easiest thing. Because why? Because your brain is constantly consuming information, whether you like it or not. So pick your friends wisely. We say this, right? We say this, but how often do we really do this? Pick your friends wisely. Pick who you hang out with in terms of your family members wisely. We say, this is a tough one. I'm not going to name names, but there's someone very close in my life who spends a lot of time with their parent, and their parent is constantly putting them down. And then they go back and try to figure out why they're feeling down in life. Well, who are you hanging out with? Who you're surrounding yourself with? And so we are constantly being programmed by other people. We have to program ourselves. For those of you who are familiar with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, this is one of the state-of-the-art technologies that was developed back in the days, 70s, 80s. It really ramped up, for example, to be able to reprogram yourself. Can you reprogram yourself? Absolutely. It just takes time. It takes effort. And it takes, Nathan, I think one of the things that has really become evident to me more than anything when it comes to changing your life, or doing something different for the better, is the environment that you put yourself in through that transition program or process.
I have a hack that I've kind of playfully named conscious content consumption. It's basically the idea of garbage in, garbage out. Your diet predicts or leads to what kind of health you have. Your content diet leads to what kind of mentality, what kind of worldview, what kind of even attitude. I notice that when I wake up and the first thing I do is I start listening to something like Earl Nightingale, or I start my day off reading some copywriting and marketing books, my mind gets keyed or geared for that for the rest of the day. But when I wake up and the first thing I do is I turn on YouTube and I check out what's going on in the political world, a lot of times my day is like train wrecked right at the beginning, and I'm in a bad mood maybe not a bad mood, but I definitely notice the content that I consume has a huge impact on where my mind goes, the possibilities that I see, the limitations that I see, and consciously picking out what I'm going to consume, saying, okay, am I going to do this or am I going to do this? Am I going to read this or am I going to read this? Am I going to tune into this YouTube channel or this other YouTube channel? It's just like, am I going to eat vegetables or am I going to eat Twinkies? And the results are very much the same. I guess, is there anything that you would add to that as far as being able to take more of a controlling seat in the things that you believe about yourself and the behavior that you act out?
There's a number of things. What you just said was absolutely brilliant in terms of consciously controlling what you consume. That is awesome. And doing that before you start your day is actually even better. If you take a look at the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, for example, or fighters going in to boxing, what do they all have in common? All of these people, or if you watch Last Dance in terms of Michael Jordan, when he would go into a game, what did they do before? They prepared themselves. That was what was all common amongst these people. They prepared themselves psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually to go into that game to perform at their best. And a lot of them wore headphones, right? A lot of them wore headphones. A lot of them wore headphones with motivational speaking or some type of music that got them into the rhythm, that got them into the groove to be able to get into that number one thing. I was thinking about this morning. Nathan, in terms of what really differentiates someone who is looking to perform at their best or just be average. And guess what it is? It's their state. It's the state that they are in, their ability to lock in their mind, their emotions, you could say their physiology, the physical element, and their energy. And when those are aligned, you become extremely powerful. And there's a gentleman that said this, I can't remember who it was, but basically he said, you know what, the only thing that you can control before you go into a game, or even when you go into a game, is yourself, right? So that's why you practice so hard. I think it actually was Michael Jordan's trainer that says we made him practice so hard that when he went into a game, it was easy for him. That's the mental, you can say, toughness that you have to have.
I want to get your point or your take on this too. Flow state versus force state. When we try to force things usually just fall apart, but sometimes we can get into that flow state where stuff just is like attracted to us and comes together. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, this is one of my favorite topics, man. This is brilliant. If someone asked me, what led to where I am today, you know what it was? It was a study of flow state when I was a kid. And I didn't know it was flow state at that time. I was reading up on inventors like Leonardo da Vinci, Einstein, and they all talked about flow state in an indirect way where they just got into the rhythm and were able to download, you can say, this genius, this universal genius, and come up with these ideas. They were given to them. They weren't necessarily something that they constructed. You talk to them, they say it was like something popped into their mind that said, okay, this is the answer. That is one element of flow state. The other element, for example, is just if you're in sports, you're just moving. Your body is moving and your mind is right there. Like there's no, how do I say it? You're in total presence, right? So there's a number of things that happen with flow state. And I think we should actually do an episode specifically on flow state, because I'm a firm, adamant believer in it. Actually, I've partnered up with universities in Canada and US to actually do studies on flow state. So we're very well versed in this when it comes to flow state, because I'm a firm believer. And I've tried to get myself into flow state as much as I can. And why? Why do you do this? So you talk about forcing yourself and something just flowing. The best athletes force themselves through practice and flow through the real thing. That is the difference. If you can force yourself to get into the full flow state, then things just kind of open up a little bit. Flow state, again, requires a certain number of elements. And I don't want to ruin it because, let's do an entire episode on that. I think we can dive deep into that. But let's just, to sum it up, what you were talking about, when you're in the rhythm. That is the flow state. It's a rhythm. And what felt like it was tough to do before becomes easy for you, and it becomes natural for you. And it's like it's a dance rather than just a fight. And that's what flow state is about. But I can't say that about practice, because practice is where you need to force yourself and have the discipline to get through.
Okay, so we went all over the place with this episode. I definitely want to come back. There's been some stuff that I've been researching, and as I'm going through it, I'm like, man, I wonder what Purdeep thinks about this. So I definitely want to hit this topic. There's a couple other things that I want to pitch you for some show ideas in the future. If people don't want to miss those episodes, where's the best place to go to make sure that they're always catching new episodes?
Awesome. And I got to say, if we're going to talk about flow, you don't want to miss this. So check out youtubeformen.com or mailpodcast.com.
All right, man. And until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.